Fasten your seatbelts. I am taking you for the ride of your life. I'm going to show you what this car is.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
I am the monster the breathing men would kill.
It might be a tumor.
It's not a tumor.
I go out of my way for you. I do everything to try and make you happy. I feed you, I clean you, I dress you, and what thanks do I get?
I am so sorry.
All your fault.
I am the writing on the wall, the whisper in the classroom. Without these things, I am nothing. So now I must shed innocent blood.
Dinner is served.
Save yourself from hell.
You're listening to the 30-something movie podcast. One movie each week, 30 years in the making.
Patrick.
Well, John, that freaks the bejesus out of me. I'm just saying. I was sitting here listening to this and kind of like looking over my shoulder, trying to figure out what in the devil is going on.
Uh-huh. Yeah. What in the devil, indeed. Patrick, we're halfway through October at this point.
Yes.
It's probably, when it comes to movies, it's probably one of my favorite months of the year for the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So there will probably be a little extra degree of mischievous glee in my voice.
Yes. Well, you love this time of year.
I do. I really do. I'm super excited. Halloween is one of my favorites. So I've said that before.
Yes.
Everybody knows that. The only thing I will say about the horror movies that we have available for us in 1993, and I don't want to sell the podcast short because we're going to talk the heck out of these things, not the strongest slate of horror movies.
Of 1994, you're saying?
1993, yeah. I really don't think...
1990, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you're getting way ahead of us.
I'm way ahead of you.
Yeah.
I'm way ahead of you, John.
Yeah.
Well, so you're going to have to fill me in because honestly, most of all horror movies will be a first-time go-around for me.
They will be new for you, yeah.
Yes.
So far this month we've had, and as I was kind of divvying things up, I try to get most of the horror movies into October if I can, or horror adjacent.
Right.
We really haven't had too many others this year that I would have considered horror movies. Jurassic Park is an adventure movie. It's got horror elements to it,
right,
but not a horror movie. And just recently we had the Addams Family Values, not really a horror. I mean, definitely Halloween themed kind of movie. The Good Son, you could have considered that maybe like a psychological thriller horror type movie. Otherwise, really what we've got is we've got Nightmare Before Christmas, but I put that in December for us.
Okay.
And really and truly, the movies we had so far this month, we started the month with Fire in the Sky, the alien abduction one. Then we had, last week, we had Hocus Pocus, which is Halloween, October themed, but not scary at all. A kid's movie.
Right.
This week we've got Needful Things. And then next week we are doing Judgment Night, not really a horror movie, but that was a request. Podrick, that was his request for this year as part of his Patreon co-executive producer status. And then really the only other one that's really a horror movie is Leprechaun, which we've got at the end of this month. So not the strongest slate of horror movies for this particular year.
Yeah.
So, but we'll enjoy them either. Well, I don't know if we'll enjoy them, but we'll talk about them either way, and we'll be exuberant in our discussions.
Yes.
So.
Yes. That's all you can hope for.
Yeah. Well, I think we can just dive right onto this one. Speaking of exuberant in our discussions, this movie, and I'll just get ahead of myself just a little bit. This movie was a bit of a strange one because you had texted the rest of us, I think it was a couple of days ago, and you're like, okay, guys, just set me straight here. Is this a comedy? And I jokingly told you it was because at moments it's kind of hard to tell.
Yes.
Yeah.
It works as a comedy. It doesn't know, it doesn't know how funny it is.
Yeah.
I guess. And there was a lot of stuff that I was like, laugh out loud.
Yeah.
Like just some of the ways they delivered the lines and everything. I'm like, this is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like I was laughing out loud.
Yeah.
And then
moments where you're not supposed to laugh out loud.
Yeah, I guess not.
Really
no.
think, and I know I'm getting ahead of us here. I don't really think there's a moment when a kid in the movie has got a gun to his own head, and he says the line, "You better watch out, I'll get the stuff on you." And I kind of laughed at that. It was like, wait, who would say that?
Yeah, so I'm just going to quote one of your favorite movies to quote John, and I'm sorry, yeah. I'm gonna set you off here, but this is how I feel.
Yeah.
Okay. Dick, I tried to cover for you because I thought you were a bit crazy. Turns out you're not crazy. You're just mean. And this is only radio.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I feel about this movie. Okay, I tried to cover for it because it was a little crazy, but it's just not crazy. It's just mean. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to. I'm really trying to not be the yum yucker.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
The Yum Yucker, which I think was a really good late 80s horror movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose we need to quote unquote get into it. But yeah, this one was a struggle because I really didn't know. I didn't know how to categorize this one.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into it because oddly enough, as I'm watching this movie, and this was a first time watch for me too, as I'm watching this movie, I'm having the same reaction you are up to a certain point. And then when it gets to a certain point in the movie, I was like, well, thank you. Finally, we're getting to what I thought this movie was going to be, the
right.
vibe of this movie was going to be. And then, yeah, but it took a while to get there. And then it was a little bit of a jarring, like wait a minute, did I actually accidentally switch over to another movie?
Well, right. And honestly,
so I do have good things to say about it once we get towards the end of the movie.
Yeah. And honestly, Gremlins was like that. I mean, there was some stuff in Gremlins that was kind of like laugh out loud, but you felt bad for it, and it was dark and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. We shall it shall unfold.
We'll talk. We'll talk.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this one came out August 27th, 1993, rated R with a runtime of 2 hours, directed by Fraser, maybe Fraser, there's no I in there, Fraser C. Heston, who was the baby in the Ten Commandments, baby Moses, and is the son of Charlton Heston.
Oh, and he was the director?
And he was the director. Typically directed movies that his father was also in. This is one of, I think, only 2 movies that he directed that his father was not also in.
Interesting.
He directed Treasure Island and Alaska. Writers for this one were Stephen King, who wrote the novel, and W.D. Richter, who wrote the screenplay. Stephen King, of course, did Carrie, The Shining, a lot of other things. Richter did Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. Producers were Jack Cummings and W.D. Richter. Cummings did Alaska and City Slickers 2. Richter did Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension and Stealth. Composer was Patrick Doyle, who did Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire and Thor. Cinematographer was Tony Westman, who did Snow Dogs and Killer Image. Editor was Rob Cobran, who did The Execution of Raymond Graham and Alaska. Production company was Castle Rock Entertainment. Budget was approximately $25 million. Box office was $15.2 million. Cinema Score gives it a B-, and Flickmetrics gives it a 53%. Max von Sydow, who died in 2020, was Leland Gaunt. He was in The Exorcist and The Seventh Seal. And Judge Dredd. I mean, because no one wants to forget that classic. Ed Harris played Sheriff Alan Pangborn. He was in The Truman Show and A Beautiful Mind. Bonnie Bedelia played Polly Chalmers. She was in Die Hard and Die Hard 2. Amanda Plummer was Nettie Cobb. She was in Pulp Fiction and The Fisher King. J.T. Walsh, who died in 1998, played Danforth Keaton III. He was in A Few Good Men and Good Morning Vietnam. Actually, the quote that you mentioned earlier featured J.T. Walsh as the subject of the quote. Ray McKinnon was Deputy Norris Ridgwick. He was in The Blind Side and Mud. Duncan Fraser was Hugh Priest. He was in Alive and The Fly 2. And Valerie Bromfield was Wilma Wadlowski-Jerzyk. She was in Mr. Mom and Funny Farm. So as I mentioned before, Fraser C. Heston, this was his first feature film that he directed, and typically he was directing movies that his father was in, but as I mentioned before, he was the baby Moses in the Ten Commandments, and I have a little trivia thing here. During the filming of this movie, he took the actor Max von Sydow, who played Jesus in The Greatest Story Ever Told, aside to discuss how he would play one of the upcoming scenes. One observer said, "That's something you don't see every day. Baby Moses telling Jesus how to play the devil." It's quite.
That's pretty funny. That's funny.
Quite the biblical setup there. The setting of Needful Things is a fictional town called Castle Rock, Maine. If anyone is a Stephen King fan, you are familiar with the setting of Castle Rock, Maine, because it is the setting of several of his stories. The distribution company was named Castle Rock after it released Stand By Me in 1986. The town of Castle Rock was also the setting for The Dead Zone from 1983, which I actually did a Patreon short for a little while ago. Cujo in 1983, and The Dark Half from 1993 was also the setting for Stand By Me. So it is a regular fixture, and actually a few of the characters too. I believe Sheriff Pangborn also shows up in the Stephen King movie The Dark Half as a character, and I feel like there might have been at least one other character that shows up in another Stephen King adaptation. So
they're technically, what do you call it, canonical Stephen King, this movie?
It's the SKCU. Yes. The Stephen
SKCU?
King. Yeah, the Stephen King Cinematic Universe.
Stephen King, I gotcha.
Yeah. Or is it the CRU, the CRCU, Castle Rock Cinemated Universe? I don't even know what I'm saying.
I think a cinemated universe would be a fun place to be.
That's the best word. Yeah. We have all the best words.
I am now incorporating that into the lexicon of my
Cinemated. It's part of the
cinemated.
The Marvel Cinemated Universe.
I think to successfully unpack this standard, and
you're gonna have to You're gonna have to cinemate it.
I think we need to cinemate our anchor standards. And
yeah. I challenge you to use that term and use it with 102% confidence in every meeting that you're going to be in this year, and see how long it takes somebody to comment and ask what that word means.
Do you think I'm going to get the whole way, or do you think someone's going to ask?
I think you're going to get further than you might think.
I think that there's a lot of people I think people are just going to go with it.
I think so.
And I have the opportunity to, John. I'm going to be in a lot more meetings this year.
I know. I think I want you to report back on this. Like I'm expecting to hear great things.
I'm going in. I'm going to check this out, man. Okay. I'm like one of those reporters that like lives with the Hells Angels to like write the book about it.
And we're going to embed you in the faculty meetings.
We have just gone way too inside baseball for 99% of our listening audience. That would just sound like a couple of teachers just like, you know what I'm saying?
We're really trying to get down to that 1%.
Anchor standards. Oh God, we just lost them, John.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh boy.
The 30-something educational podcast.
How come like camera guys, like the Greatest Gen guys always get to talk about like split diopters? We're talking about anchor standards. We got to punch this up a little bit somehow.
Nobody's interested in anchor standards.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Well,
you're going to have to, you know what we need to do to this conversation? We need to cinemate it.
Dude, this is happening.
If we can, this is kind of like The Simpsons. Cinemated is to us what The Simpsons, what embiggened was to Homer Simpson.
I love everything that's happening right now. Everything that's happening now.
Yeah, we're going to have to embiggen the cinemated experience is what we're going to have to do.
I don't know why that's so funny. I've only worked for a week and a half, man. This does not bode well for the year.
It might be kind of rough. Bonnie Bedelia previously appeared in Salem's Lot, the TV miniseries, which was also based on a Stephen King novel and was also about a mysterious stranger who moves into a small town and opens up an antique shop. Because you got to watch out for those antique shop people.
Gotta watch out for those antiquers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the novel, young Brian Rusk does actually commit suicide. In the film, however, he is revealed by the sheriff to have survived. There is a line of dialogue that was a last-minute addition after the studio strongly objected to the horrific implications of a child killing himself. Probably agree on that one. Although, I will say, as much as and I'm sure you feel the same way, not a fan of having children get killed in movies, I do actually think if they wanted this to be as sinister a movie as it probably needed to be, it probably should have kept that in.
Yeah.
And normally, obviously, if this is real life, I wouldn't be advocating for that, but it's a movie and it's a story. And I felt like this movie at times was not as sinister as it should have been, given who the villain was.
Yeah. We're going to get into it. I think there's some things that I would like to see this movie punched up, you know?
Yeah, cinemated. We'd like to see it cinemated.
I think we need to cinemate the movie.
Yeah. We're gonna cinemate the heck out of this. All right. In a quiet town, darkness descends as a small store hides a sinister secret. Desires turn deadly, and the evil must be exposed before it consumes everyone. Be careful what you wish for in Needful Things.
Castle Rock Entertainment and Stephen King invite you to visit Castle Rock, Maine, a quiet little town whose population has just increased by 1.
Do you believe in the devil, Father? I guess I have to. We can't have one without the other. What does he look like? What the hell does he look like?
May I take this opportunity to welcome you to Castle Rock on the good Lord's behalf?
Why not? So where are you from?
Ohio. I've been in this business a long time, and I have learned the pleasure of offering my customers what they really need.
He came here to destroy us.
Oh, you wussy. There have been 2 murders and an attempted suicide in this quiet little town, and Mr. Leland Gaunt is at the bottom of it.
You are disgusting. I like that in a person.
Everybody that's got it coming is going to get it now.
The young carpenter from Nazareth. I knew him well. Promising young man. But he died badly. A famine here, a flood there, a little bloodlust, a broken heart. You can't win. I've got God on my side. Fun now. How is it going? I killed my wife. Is that wrong? Hey, these things happen.
For this one, we've got 10 major moments. This breaks down the plot into the major events as they happened. So if you haven't seen this in a while, or if you haven't seen it and you're not going to go watch it, we always recommend that you go watch the movie first and then come on back. But if you are not going to go watch it and you just need a quick overview of the plot of this one, we'll walk you through with these 10 major moments. So starting with one of the first major moments, Gaunt's arrival. Leland Gaunt, which is a great name for a villain like this. It just, the name kind of just oozes evil. Just kind of oozes some kind of like slimy creepiness.
Yeah. And anybody that's read Harry Potter, well, giveaways, but know that Gaunt is a name that is prevalent in there as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah. And just a shout out for I cannot think of I can't think of the name of that tune, so I'm embarrassed, but it's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's an amazing piece.
Yeah. That's not Night on Bald Mountain, is it?
No, it's In the Hall of the King.
Hall of the King. Hall of the Mountain King.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By Grieg.
Yes. I was on kind of the right track. Ish.
Yes, we got there.
I mean, it took a while, but much like this movie, it took a while, but we got there.
It took a while, but it got there. And Leland Gaunt is just, so great introduction, man. We said this movie wasn't going to take long, and you're at the first major moment, and I'm interrupting. But yes.
So he arrives in Castle Rock, Maine, and opens Needful Things, an antique store selling items with special significance and often supernatural abilities. His demands for payment include money and favors. Brian Rusk is a kid that comes into the store, and he becomes Gaunt's first customer, buying a rare baseball card, a signed Mickey Mantle card, which somehow is signed to him, to my friend Brian. And so in exchange, I think he paid, was it like 95 cents? And then the rest of his payment was that he had to play a prank on his neighbor, which then sets off kind of a series of escalating vendettas against each other, as everybody in the town has got something that they're kind of mad at somebody else for. And this is the first knocking over of the first domino that is going to set off a bunch of these different people. Keaton, Danforth Keaton, a corrupt boat salesman, is blackmailed and in debt. Gaunt offers him a toy racehorse that predicts horse races, promising Keaton a way to recoup his stolen money. Meanwhile, Gaunt exploits various townspeople desires, including tensions between two churches in town, Father Meehan and Reverend Willie Rose. Nettie and Wilma are arguing with each other and come to a violent end. The pranks escalate, leading to Hugh Priest killing Nettie Cobb's dog for a jacket. Nettie retaliates, thinking Wilma's responsible, and both women end up dead in a violent encounter fueled by Gaunt's manipulations. Gaunt gives Alan's fiancée, Polly Chalmers, a necklace that cures her arthritis, further ensnaring her under his influence, and after a failed attempt to pry it open, she's seduced by Gaunt and tricked into believing that Alan is corrupt. After realizing his actions led to Wilma and Nettie's deaths, a guilt-ridden Brian attempts suicide. Sheriff Allen saves him and begins to suspect Gaunt's true nature. Paranoia and anger spread throughout the town. Gaunt sells weapons, encouraging violence. Father Meehan believes Reverend Rose attacked the Catholic Church, and a riot ensues with Gaunt watching gleefully from the side. After killing his wife in a paranoid rage, Keaton is manipulated further by Gaunt. With explosives strapped to himself, he becomes a live threat during the town's riot. In a climactic confrontation, Alan manages to convince the townspeople of Gaunt's manipulations. They stop fighting and confess their pranks to each other. Keaton, in a final act of defiance against Gaunt's taunts, that's a fun one, blows up the Needful Things store. Emerging unharmed from the explosion, Gaunt hints at future malevolence and departs Castle Rock, leaving devastation in his wake and moving on to the next town. Those are your 10 major moments. And now it's time for some deep thoughts. But these are creepy deep thoughts because it's October, and that's what we do here.
And now, deep thoughts.
Yes. Pat, I think we both said this is the first time we'd seen this one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. First viewing. And I think we've kind of both let the cat out of the bag here, or the dog out of its skin, and said that we were a bit confused by this one and maybe what its intentions were.
Yeah, well, clearly, because I totally missed it.
Yeah. Well, we're on along the same lines as, what was it, Flatliners, when you thought Flatliners was a comedy?
Well, yeah. But the thing was, I realized partway through that one that, oh, wait a minute, I don't think this is supposed to be funny. I'm not laughing.
Right. Well, the problem with this one is this problem starts off presenting itself as something of a comedy.
Well, it does, and even it kind of wraps up like that. Now, some of the stuff in the middle got pretty over the top with the violence and just dark, people killing each other and all that. And I dark comedies, boy, I don't want to judge them as a whole, but there is that element. It's like, should we really be laughing at this? Is this really funny? And that's where, when I texted you guys, I think I got it. I think this is supposed to be like a dark comedy. And then the whole crux of what I was going to say was just, it seems pretty mean-spirited. Like, there's some really funny parts, but it doesn't, boy, we just have to tone some of this down. The kid with the gun, the people murdering each other. I'm just like, why are we getting so, that's a little bit much. But that being said, if it's not supposed to be funny, well, okay, then I guess those things, fit in with a horror type movie. But then it just comes across really mean, and I think it's missing some potential, because some of the situations, I got to admit, I was laughing pretty good. At.
Well, to your point, and I had, knowing that this was a horror movie, or supposed to be a horror movie, I took a lot of it as, wow, this is really tame, and it's got a weird, I don't know, like the entire, I keep using the word vibe, but like the entire vibe of the beginning of the movie is, it's like the music just doesn't fit with the scenes. The music is too lighthearted and almost campy at times, and I'm like, this is not the right, this is mischievous, but it's almost like childlike mischievousness, and Leland is supposed to be the devil. So I'm not sure that the devil has childlike mischievousness.
Yeah.
So we probably need to punch some of this stuff up here. I mean, because later on in the movie, there is a scene where the sheriff is down in the store and comes across a bunch of old newspaper clippings of different events that it's implied Leland Gaunt has been involved in. And of course, he makes different comments. He's like, oh, the carpenter from Nazareth. Yeah, I knew him. I knew that guy. Or he's got newspaper clippings of, Hitler invades Poland, or whatever the different newspaper clippings were, or Plague Unleashed, or all these different things. And once we get to that point in the movie, like at that point, I'm like, okay, if that's who this character is, then we are ramping this up appropriately. But why did it have to take this long to get to this point? Because I didn't get the sense of what I wanted to feel from this movie was a sense of creeping dread throughout the entire thing. And I didn't feel like it was creeping dread. I felt like it was maybe the kids from the Sandlot that were playing pranks on people.
Yeah. And that's where, I mean, and I'm going to come at it from the other direction. And I guess I would have liked something more like Gremlins with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, kind of humor in there, because I think that could have, I think that could have worked a little bit more with the lightheartedness. And I'd almost say back down some of the language, back down some of the violence, back down. Yeah, and I think it would have, and like I said, I'm coming at it from the other perspective. One thing, and I don't know if you're exactly saying this, but one thing that hit me, and with what you are saying, it kind of makes me double down on it. I wish they would have explained Leland Gaunt more. I wish they would have just you would have known what his motivations are, the why of he was doing his thing. I mean, I guess if you wanted to keep it mysterious, okay, but like you realize right away, okay, he's selling people, and then I was this is probably the devil trying to, get people's souls and all this kind of thing. Like even I figured that out within a couple of minutes of watching the movie. So it's not some big secret, that is keeping the audiences strung along, a la Devil's Advocate.
Yeah.
Right. So then explain his backstory more, or explain that character's backstory within the context of this world. I think that would have helped out an awful lot. And then, like you said, now we're not waiting half the movie just to kind of get to the crux of what he's trying to do.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if in regular Stephen King fashion, my understanding is the novel that this comes from was over 900 pages long. And that's another thing too about Stephen King. And I don't profess to be an expert on Stephen King. I have not read any of his novels to completion. My son has read several of them, but I have not read any of them. And I've seen quite a few of his movies, but what I know, just as a casual viewer of Stephen King movies, what I know is that they're really hit or miss when it comes to adapting Stephen King stories to film or to videotape, because there are some really good ones. I mean, there's Shawshank Redemption, there's Misery, I even enjoyed Pet Sematary. I know that there's several. The Green Mile was another really good one. One of the things I think Stephen King does well, which maybe it's harder to translate that into film, is while he's considered a horror writer, I really think that where most of his stories shine are when the horror is more of a kind of what I mentioned before, kind of like a sense of creeping psychological dread. When it's more and I believe he's probably said this, that really the villain in most of his stories He really views it more as the horrible things that people do to each other.
Okay.
You know, if there are
I'm down with
monsters,
that.
if there are monsters in his stories, it will be the people. It won't be an actual monster. You know, unlike if it's other than like a movie like It, where clearly there is a monster, or Cujo, where there is a monster. But I think that's in his writing. My understanding is that that's where he really shines, is showing the humanity, and when there is something corrupt about humanity, like that's where the true horror is. The horror is more psychological. It's not jump scares and violence and gore and all that stuff.
Right.
Which is why I think some of these Stephen King movies, the directors maybe get a hold of these movies and just go, oh, cool, let's have some blood and let's have some scary stuff. And it's very surface level, but they don't really take the time to get into the characters and get into the people that are involved. And what I understand is there is also a 4-hour cut of this movie that was turned into I believe TBS actually aired it on television at one point. And my understanding is you can find it on a German DVD or German Blu-ray, the 4-hour cut of this movie, where it really dives more into the different people in this town. And some of the people that you see show up at the end of the movie, you're like, who is this person? Oh, that's the kid's mother? Oh, okay. I haven't seen her this entire movie, you know, but she shows up at the end and she's like, my son. Well, who's your son? And so I think my understanding is the 4-hour version of this really does dive into that more. I don't know if it dives more into Leland Gaunt and kind of his thing, or if it's more into the townspeople and kind of their interactions with each other. But my guess is that if that's the case, maybe that would have been more of what I was hoping for in this movie. But yeah, I think my point for this is, if Leland Gaunt is meant to be the devil, Castle Rock, Maine seems to be like a big step down from, I don't know, World War II Europe. I mean, it seems like if he's on vacation for a bit, then maybe this is how he relaxes.
Right.
But otherwise, I'm like, so the devil is going to open up a antique thrift shop and sell trinkets and get people to throw turkey poop on somebody's laundry.
Seems a little overly theatrical.
I wanted to see I wanted to see a Leland Gaunt who was existentially terrifying on a biblical level. If he's supposed to be the devil, I wanted to see that's who he is. He's the devil. So I wanted to see more along those lines, you know, because you can't spell antique curio thrift shop without Antichrist. So I wanted to see more along those lines. And I wanted to see what it made me think of was, I'm watching this and I'm going, okay, Max von Sydow, he's a great actor. You know, he's doing a great job with this. You know, he was one of the strongest parts of this movie. Exactly. He's charming when he needs to be charming. He's creepy when he needs to be creepy. But all in all, I'm watching this and I'm going, the character, whenever it was, spoiler alert for the movie Fallen, if you haven't seen that one, whenever the demon takes over somebody's body in Fallen, man, is that creepy. And every actor who has to portray that demon that hops from body to body does an amazing job of getting across kind of the creepiness and the confidence and just the charm of that character. Also, you probably haven't seen this one, but there was a movie series called The Prophecy, and Christopher Walken played a great character in that one. He was supposed to be a version of the angel Gabriel, I believe, who had actually decided to turn and had decided he thought he could do a better job of being the devil than the devil himself. So that movie series, that's what Christopher Walken was playing. And Christopher Walken, same thing. Like, he was creepy, he was charming, he was confident, all the stuff that you would expect one of these characters to be. You know, if we're talking these depictions we've had in movies and stories of the devil thinking that he's won already, and so that's how he struts about the earth, is assuming he's already won, then That's more of what I wanted to see, and more deviousness from him rather than, all right, I'll give a kid a baseball card if he throws turkey poop on somebody's laundry.
Right. And again, do the baseball card kid. I'm fine with that, but then lean into the lighthearted, lean into the do you know what I'm saying? Lean into that side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm standing up for my cluelessness. That's where I was watching it and thinking, oh, okay, this is more comedic. This is what this is supposed to be. Because there were scenes that, like I said, were humorous. And I hear what you're saying. Yeah, you could make this terrifying, but that's just the thing is they didn't lean into either way. It just kind of, it never got above its base level.
Yeah. And again, I haven't seen the longer cut of the movie, but in the cut of the movie that we watched, there were things that I was like, that's a completely missed opportunity, because for example, the scene where Leland, kind of seduces Polly.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else knows that happened except for him and Polly. And part of me is like, I feel like he would have used this in some way. Maybe have the sheriff see them through a window, or I don't know, something like that, or I don't know, have that play that out a little bit longer, so that it really does cause this massive rift in the relationship between the sheriff and Polly. But it's kind of used because when that scene happens, I'm like, oh man, she's completely starting to like lose herself now, because she would never have done this before. But then that didn't really go anywhere. And I'm like, I feel like if Leland Gaunt is supposed to be who he's supposed to be, I feel like he would have used that to quote Billy Joel from his Live at Long Island concert that he did back in the 80s. He's going to space this out for maximum effect.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Leland Gaunt needed to space some of these things out for maximum effect. And in the like, it's not even the middle of the movie, but like from the maybe 60% of the movie to maybe like the 90% point of the movie, that's the part of the movie where I'm like, all right, okay, this is feeling a little bit more like an apocalyptic John Carpenter movie or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm getting into this. This is what I was kind of expecting for the rest of this. And then it does kind of end a little tongue in cheek. And as we got to the ending of this one, I was like, all right, okay, so he's not dead, and he's going to continue on with his stuff. And I did enjoy his kind of creepy little monologuing there at the end. He's like, hey, by the way, you guys are going to get married. You're going to have a beautiful little family. Why don't you say hi to your son, your grandson, Bob, for me? I'll be seeing him August 14th, 2053 in Jakarta. We are going to have a great time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's some of the stuff that I think would have helped the just campiness of the beginning of this movie. That's creepy, because even if he says it with kind of like a smile on his face and you're like, wait, what is he talking about? Just the thought that there's no way, he already knows what's going to happen. There's no way that they could possibly change any of this, or at least they think that there's no way. And how are they going to grow up? How is their family going to grow up that way, with mom and dad thinking that someday their grandchild is going to cause all kinds of mayhem because he's going to team up with the devil? And what are the next 70 years going to be like, 60 years going to be like, while they're waiting for that to happen?
Right.
And that's the dread that just would kind of sit there over the course of the next 50 to 60 years for that family. But you don't, other than that comment at the end, if you had done more of that at the beginning and have a little bit higher stakes or a little bit more dread in the beginning of the movie, rather than, you'd like a jacket? I'll give you a jacket. You want a baseball card? I'll give you a baseball card. And I know that things did escalate, but it seemed like it took too long for things to escalate.
Well, sure. And again, like, the concept of the movie is cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really a cool thing. Your main character, I keep forgetting the guy's name, but the guy that played Gaunt was
Max von
one
Sydow.
of the strengths. Max von Sydow one of the huge strengths of the movie. Awesome. Like, all that stuff's good. But again, just like you said, they don't quite explain things fully. You don't get the backstory in that. And even that end piece, I hear what you're saying, where, you know, that ending part is, yeah, just so you know, in 2055, your grandson, and goes through the whole thing. That's cool, but it's kind of like, well, going back to your point, why is he at this little town handing out baseball cards? Why is he at this town handing out baseball cards? Why didn't he just go forward in time to 2055? Or does the devil experience time linearly? Because if he experiences time linearly, I can't say that word correctly. I'm sorry, I'm jumping over it. Then
if you cinemate it, it's easier to say.
I need to cinemate it.
Yeah.
How does he really know? You know, and if he doesn't experience time linearly, then okay, we're like the wormhole aliens in Deep Space Nine. Well, okay, but then explore that whole piece, right? Like if he's all knowing, do you get what I'm saying? It's just, it's, I think you just got to explain it more.
Yeah.
And it'll be more fascinating.
Yeah, I think I would have liked to have seen. I would have liked the antique store to also maybe be a little creepier.
Yeah.
Like I would have liked to have seen if he's the devil, I would have liked to have seen an antique store where it is full of stuff. For the most part, it was kind of an empty house that had these few items here and there. And I know that he could kind of conjure up the items that were going to be exactly what these people were looking for. But I would have liked to have seen an antique store that was full of other things from his travels through history. You know, that he had kind of collected some things along the way. If it was like a relic from the 9th century, or if it was something he collected from the Crusades, or something that he brought from Germany during the 1940s, or stuff like that. If there were little items throughout the store that even if they don't mention them, just you as a viewer could see that in the background and go, oh, wow, is that what I think that is? That would have added a little bit of extra layer of dread to the store itself. Yeah, I didn't expect, I knew it was a Stephen King movie, so I wasn't expecting like terrifying monsters, or I wasn't expecting jump scares, or I wasn't expecting things like that, but I did expect a little bit more creeping dread and just a sense of uneasiness about this movie. And I was getting more of a, like you said, is this supposed to be a horror comedy at the beginning of this? And it's not. And I'll give a spoiler for our Patreon episode that's coming out in 3 days. At the time this is released, 3 days from now, this weekend, if you are a Patreon co-executive producer, you are getting an episode of Something Wicked This Way Comes from 1983. And spoiler alert, that movie from 10 years before does that so much better than I think Needful Things does. We watched these two movies kind of at about the same time, and spoiler alert, we're recording them on the same night. But one of the things about Something Wicked This Way Comes, it was made 10 years before this. It was a Disney movie. It was rated PG, and I think it does a better job of creating that kind of underlying sense of dread as the kids are going through this whole thing with the carnival that comes into town, and the scenes with Jonathan Pryce playing Mr. Dark. It does such a great job of what this movie did not do well for like the first 2/3 of the movie.
Yeah.
And I really wish, and it was funny watching these two together. The one that I think of as quote unquote a children's movie, I think did a better job of providing that sense of uneasiness and fear and dread and just psychological itchiness than the Stephen King movie did.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, man, I hear you. Yeah. The battle between the priest and the reverend was pretty funny.
That was kind of funny. I mean, there were moments where I was like, okay, this is a little campy and a little goofy, but I'll allow it.
They're not monsters, they're Baptists, or whatever the heck he yells in his battle cry. And
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Now I will say that this was because I wanted this movie to be scarier than it was. And I think that's part of my disappointment is in my head over the years, I've built up the thought that this movie should be very scary because as a kid, I remember going to the video store and I remember seeing the movie cover for this one is like this monstrous face kind of like pushing through a white cloth or something like that. You remember how, Pat, the year was 2015, and it was one of the first episodes we ever did of this podcast, and it was Nightmare on Elm Street. Remember the scenes in Nightmare on Elm Street where Freddy's face is like pushing through the wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the wall looks very elastic, and it's kind of, he's just like pushing his face through there, and the cover for this movie is very much like that. It looks like a monster's face or like a demonic face, like pushing through a white sheet or a white wall or something like that. So as a kid, in my mind, I remember seeing the cover for this movie and thinking, oh, I bet that's a pretty scary one. And now getting a chance to watch it 30-ish years later, really
No, not so much.
Not so much. No, not so much. But, Well, I think that's going to do it for this one. We do have 3 questions, which I definitely want to jump into here. But if anybody else would like to throw in their 2 cents or 95 cents and a favor, you can totally do that. We would love to hear from you. So feel free to reach out with a voicemail, an email. Let us know, are we completely wrong on this one? Have you watched Needful Things? Are you a Stephen King fan? And you're like, you guys, you're missing some fundamental Stephen King stuff here. By no stretch of the imagination am I saying I'm anything like a Stephen King expert. So I was told by a college professor that I could be a Willa Cather scholar if I wanted to be. But, Oh Pioneers, My Antonia, that kind of stuff. Okay. I don't know.
We're not sure. Jury's still out.
I think I wrote an essay that the professor really liked, and that's why they made that comment. But I'm like, no,
that can happen.
I think I'll be a teacher. And so, but yes, I'm not an expert at all in Stephen King. So if you are, and if we've completely missed or overlooked something, please let us know, because I would love to. I'd love to. If it's absolutely like you're like, no, you have to see the 4-hour version of this to really get, what's going on here, then absolutely tell me that, and I will go seek out the 4-hour version of this, and I'll give it a try at some point. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
And again, the concept, awesome. Max von Sydow, awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like horror movies, check it out. It's fun.
It's got a winning combination of people and situations and whatnot, but it just tastes a little funny.
That's it.
The ingredients are there. Just something tastes funny about it. It's like when a cannibal's eating a clown. It tastes funny.
Nicely done.
On that
October
note,
humor.
On that note, here's the 3 questions.
He asks each traveler 5 questions.
3 questions.
What were they, psychos?
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Quid pro quo. I tell you things, you tell me things.
I'm not interrupting anything, am I? You really look deep in thought.
So I'll ask you the questions and then we'll see.
John, I don't know if I'm scared for the 3 questions now or I'm just really excited. That was an exciting 3 questions opening.
You should be scared.
Oh, okay, well, I got excited.
Okay.
That was like cool.
That's fine. You can be excited.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Is that...
No, it's
maybe it's... yeah, I don't mean to undercut it.
No, you're
maybe I'm like...
getting into the Octoberness of it all.
Maybe I'm like 80% scared and 20% excited.
Yeah. I think
or maybe
I think what you've done is you've taken those 2 emotions and you've cinemated them.
I have cinemated them, exactly. Yeah. See, that's the thing.
The problem is the more I say cinemated, the more I want a cinnamon roll. It's starting to cause some issues.
I see nothing but success here.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. And while we were on the topic just prior to starting the 3 questions, Pat, how do you know when a cannibal has given up?
How do you know, John?
He throws up his hands.
Oh, geez. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Can't put my finger on it, but I think that might have been a good one. Hands down. Anyway, question number 1, favorite or most unique thing you've ever bought at an antique store or garage sale? Are you a garage sailor, Pat?
Nope.
No? Are you an antiquer?
No.
Okay.
I used to be, I like old things, you know, I like old things, but I'm kind of like not thing right now. I'm not into things right now. I want less things. You know what I mean? So I don't want to.
You're all about that minimalist lifestyle.
Yeah, I don't want to go around and get other people's old things.
Yeah.
But I suppose if you find like a rare book that's, oh man, check that out. We found that book or something like that. Back in the day when I was a kid and had very little disposable income and the parents were kind of very limiting in terms of what video game systems you could get.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd go to the store or the garage sale, and someone was selling their old Commodore 64 games.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it was like, oh man, check that out. And that stuff would get exciting, but I'm not a super big antiquer.
Okay. I do like to check out a garage sale from time to time. We grew up, my grandmother loved garage sales. She was kind of the garage sale queen. And so anytime if I was going over to her house to kind of hang out with her and my grandpa for a weekend for like a Saturday morning or something like that, she was always like, let's get in the car, let's go to some garage sales. So we were constantly doing that kind of stuff. So I grew up doing that. We grew up actually putting on a garage sale a couple times a year just to kind of get rid of stuff. Like we had a huge family garage sale where everybody in the family would drop their stuff off at somebody's house, and we would actually host the garage sale and sell it there. So that was always kind of a big deal in my family. I do enjoy a good antique store or a good flea market or something like that.
Sure.
You know, we hit up it actually made us feel a little old because when we think of flea markets, you think of like, yeah, this is like old stuff and antique type stuff. And when we were just recently on vacation in Boston, there was a day when the weather was just absolutely terrible. So we kind of had to scrap some of our plans and head indoors. And we realized we were not that far away from a massive flea market that was in Massachusetts.
Very cool.
And so we decided to go stop over at this flea market. And we go inside, and the flea market, nearly every stall is geared towards, let's say, 80s and 90s paraphernalia.
Well, that's a win-win right there.
I mean, it was awesome, but at the same time, I was like, I feel like flea markets were for older things. What are we saying when the flea market is mostly filled with He-Man toys and Star Wars figures?
Yeah,
and WrestleMania 2 VHS tapes.
I think the truth, John, is that we are the old things.
Pat, I don't accept that. I think the truth is out there, and
I agree, man.
And I want to believe that there's something different.
I understand.
Yeah.
But do you know how old the original Toy Story movie is?
Pat, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know, John.
So favorite or most unique thing that I have bought at an antique store, garage sale, flea market, swap meet type thing? You know, honestly, I don't know. As a kid, I would always pick up like Star Wars toys and Ninja Turtle toys and stuff like that at a garage sale. One time, I think I was able to score like a brand new bike that had barely been used at a garage sale. I am always up for finding a garage sale where somebody is selling some comic books and they have no clue what they've got. You know, sometimes you'll hit up a garage sale and they will have a decent selection of vinyl records. Yeah, and even just recently we headed over to the Volo Antique Mall. That's over there by where for those that are not from this area, there is the Volo Auto Museum, which is very awesome. They have the antique mall over there. I did find several spots that had some items of movie interest that John was interested in, so I did check out a few things there. You know, if I ever am able to score anything Star Wars or Rocketeer or anything like that, like I'm always on the lookout for the future ex Mrs. Malcolm. I can't think of anything specific. Although I was at a store not too long ago. It wasn't actually a flea market or antique store, garage sale, anything like that, but it was a store that was selling old toys. And the most fun thing that I think I've seen recently is I have a photograph of myself at age 3 where I'm holding up 3 fingers in each hand to indicate it is my 3rd birthday. And
right.
My birthday cake is right in front of me. And on the birthday cake are they're laying flat on the cake. So they're not standing up vertically. They're laying flat on the surface of the cake, were these cake toppers of Darth Vader and a stormtrooper.
Right.
And I happened to be, and they were not action figures. So they were like specific to, they were this cake topper. That's exactly what they were supposed to be. And I was in a toy store, a vintage toy store recently, and I happened to spot those cake toppers. And I was like, that is amazing. I have not seen those since December of 1983.
Right.
You know, this
It's been a while.
This is amazing. Like this is pretty cool. Do I want to pay I don't remember, they were like $30 or $40. Like, do I need to pay the $30 or $40 to relive my childhood? No, but I got to see them, and that's cool.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
It's cool that they're still floating around.
Yeah. Yeah. So anything specific? No, not necessarily, but if I can ever find a fun comic or, like you mentioned, a book or something like that, that's always fun stuff. Or a record, if there's a good record somewhere.
Sure.
Question number 2. Leland Gaunt kept his shop bell hanging from the rearview mirror in his car. So do you have anything hanging in your car in that spot? Or if no, what would you hang there?
I got nothing, and I'm not big on the hanging of things in the car. But I mean, I suppose if I was doing like an old street rod or something, I'd have the fuzzy dice hanging.
Would you? I kind of figured you might do the fuzzy dice.
I mean, just if I had the car that fit with that genre and that ilk, I would do that. But otherwise, I'm not a big dangly thing hanging type person.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I've gone the nerdy route of that, and I do have something hanging from mine. I have a little replica of Han Solo's sabak dice that are hanging from the Millennium Falcon.
Yes.
That's what I have in my car. So I've got the Star Wars version of the fuzzy dice.
That's awesome.
In my car.
That's very cool.
All right. And question number 3, because they feature prominently in this movie, what are your favorite kind of apples?
Granny Smiths are my absolute favorite. That being said, I've really never met an apple I didn't like.
True.
And so there's some that I feel like you got to get them where they're more fresh, or there's some where they're okay, but it's like I never met an apple I didn't like. But I mean, the absolute favorite got to be the Granny Smiths.
Yeah. I was
What
going
about yourself?
I was going to say Red Delicious when they're fresh and they're good. I do like the Red Delicious. Granny Smith is a close runner up for me. The kid in me wants to say Granny Smith slathered in caramel.
Sure.
Actually, the adult diabetic in me also wants to say the same thing.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I'll tell you another one. It's like eating candy is the Honeycrisp apple.
Oh yeah.
Those things are great.
Yeah. Well, see, we kind of inched our way into the 30-something food podcast, but we kind of
got there.
We kept it mostly healthy.
Yeah. Apples are good. And you can find good stuff to dip apples in.
Yeah.
You can dip them in, like, dipped in vanilla Greek yogurt is amazing. Dipped in peanut butter.
My kids have used up all the peanut butter in the house. I'm not going to spend time covering this on the podcast. I'm just going to say I apparently have failed at least one of my children because they don't know how to cut an apple without wasting about 40% of it. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say about that. It bothered me the other day when I came and found an apple sitting on the kitchen counter that had been cut in such a way that there was a lot left over that could have been consumed. And I had a problem with that and had to have a small discussion with the child. And I'm not sure if they've seen the error of their ways, but I'm doing my part for apple kind.
That's what you got to do. Yeah. I'll tell you this. I had a student teacher one time that told me he'd read this article about the proper way to eat an apple.
Oh yeah.
And you don't eat around the sides. You eat it from the top down, like where the stem is coming out. You turn it and bite into that area. And if you eat it from the top down and you do it right, the only thing left over should be a little tiny bit that holds the seeds and the stem.
Huh.
That you get like 40 to 50% more apple by eating it that way. and I've tried it a couple times, man. I'm not kidding you. You get more apple out of it. It's pretty awesome.
So you pull the stem out of the apple.
Nope, you just start eating towards the stem, and you kind of bite around it.
Oh, okay.
Eventually, the stem just kind of doesn't have anything to hold on to it, and it disappears. Or not disappears, but it like you just throw that to the side. And you keep eating down, and I think you can get towards the core a lot easier, just the way the apple comes apart. And so all that stuff that kind of circles this core, you get to eat that. And basically, if you do it right, the only thing you're left with is the little bit of the core in the middle. You go all the way to the bottom and done. And like you've just increased your apple amount by 30 to 40%. So
the more, I guess.
There it is, man.
Well, I think we've learned a lot here tonight. I think we've learned that you don't shop in the devil's antique store.
Yeah, it's to be avoided.
Yeah, maybe you just don't raise turkeys.
Yeah.
You know, and don't, no matter what your religion is, don't try to kill each other. I think that's a key point, especially trying to stab each other with the weather vanes from your church or the crosses that are atop the,
A little excessive.
Yeah, that might be a little excessive. You know, we should probably try to have discussions that are, you know, ecumenical in nature and not murderous. And we've learned how to eat an apple.
Yeah, that's the important one right there.
That might be the most important thing we've learned tonight. So, Pat, I'm glad I was here for this.
John, I'm glad I was here for this. It was an informative thing and a fun movie.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to give the movie some props, right? Like, if it wasn't a fun movie, we wouldn't have this much discussion.
We wouldn't be talking about it. So, yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm going with it.
It was fine. It was a fun movie. Yeah. I mean, there were things I would have wished it had done a little differently, but you know, overall, a fun movie. I think it cinemated itself well.
There was much cinemation happening.
Yeah. Everybody, well, that's going to be it for this episode. If you are looking for more horror in your life, then you can check out the rest of our October episodes. So far this month, we've had Fire in the Sky, Hocus Pocus. This week is Needful Things. Judgment Night is next week, and then Leprechaun. And then we've got our Patreon episodes are Something Wicked This Way Comes, which I mentioned at the time of this one being released, should be out in a couple of days. Then the Patreon shorts are It Started in 93, Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., and It Ended in 93, Cheers. And then November is Thanks for the Laughs. Our Patreon episodes will be King Kong from 1933. The Patreon shorts are It Started in 93 with The X-Files, and It Ended in 93 with Quantum Leap. Regular episodes for the month of November will be So I Married an Axe Murderer, Dazed and Confused, Wayne's World 2, Grumpy Old Men, and Robin Hood Men in Tights. Have you seen any of those, Pat? Like, are there any of those that are going to be first-time viewings for you?
Boy, you went through a whole list of stuff that I've seen. I mean, Grumpy Old Men came out this year. Fantastic. Men in Tights I've seen. I don't know if there's many that you mentioned that I haven't seen.
Okay. Have you seen Dazed and Confused?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you hadn't, it'd be cool if you did.
It'd be cool if you did. That's why I like dating. Well, okay.
All right. Well, we will see you all back here next time. Thank you, Pat, for being here as always.
Oh, thank you, John. This was a good time.
All right, everyone, we will see you back here next time. Be excellent to each other. Go watch some spooky movies, and we'll see you back here next week.